Hello there, everyone, and good morning. At least it's morning for me. Good evening, good afternoon. No idea how you guys are going to be finding this. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Weather Talk. It has been a very long time. Those of you that have seen any of my previous Weather Talk videos know that that was before I started my career in TV. So if you're no idea how many people this is going to reach, or just what exactly this is going to be, it's going to be kind of more of like a podcast version of myself. So with that being said, my name is Joe Farrell, and I am the currently the morning meteorologist at KRCG 13 down in Jefferson City, covering Columbia, Jefferson City, Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. And that is where I am at currently. Previously, I was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I was the weekend meteorologist and a reporter 3 days a week. And that is kind of what this is going to be about. Now, I'm not sure why I've decided to kind of share my experiences. I do want to let everyone know who is watching that this is going to be a little bit tough for me, so bear with me. And also, do want to let you know that I'm not going to be mentioning any names from my previous job. The station itself that I worked at, KDLT, no longer exists. They were sold, combined with another station in Sioux Falls, and that is where we stand. So I want to go ahead and kind of start talking about a little bit of my experience and how I got to Sioux Falls in the first place, and how I got my career kind of started in TV. Now, I've wanted to be a meteorologist since I was 11 years old, and I started forecasting from my small hometown of Algona, Iowa then, and any of my friends watching this, you know that's what I did. You know how much I love this and how much I love weather. I do. I love it so much, and I feel very blessed to be able to actually live this out as my career. And it's been quite the experience so far. There's been a ton of positives to come along with being in news and being in TV and things like that. And I'll kind of get into a little bit of both the positive and negative side. I think I do want this to kind of end up being a little bit of truth, a little bit of reality for those of you that may be watching, or just having this on in the background. Maybe wanting to get into TV, get into news, broadcasting, just really anything that deals with multimedia journalism in any facet. So I started out as I was just an intern at the ABC station in Des Moines, ABC 5. And I was, I was a weather intern, obviously, learning a lot from the chief meteorologist, Brad Edwards there. And things were great. It was awesome to learn from him, and I certainly learned a lot. And this was about 5 years ago that all of this was going on, and before I actually got onto television, and I ended up taking a job at the ABC station in Des Moines, WOIDT Channel 5, and that was as a weekend photographer. So I actually took a job that wasn't in weather, and that was to get my foot in the door with news and with TV. I wasn't on TV at all, but I just ran the camera. I went out and got, filmed news stories for the station on weekends. And that's how I got my start in TV in general. And so that was a really good experience. And it taught me a lot in the short amount of time that I was there. I wasn't there all too long. And again, this was about 5 years ago. So this was back in 2016, 2017, kind of in that time period. And I may check my watch periodically just in case I get text messages and whatnot. I just don't want to miss anything while I am recording this. So as I got into photography and was a part of the weekend news team, doing stuff, It's all kind of behind the scenes work, and kind of what you see on TV, as far as video and interviews and things like that. That's kind of what I was getting, was video and interviews, while, they ended up teaching me how to put together a script for a newscast. And so again, I learned a ton, and it was a lot of fun. I took a lot of pride in the work that I did in Des Moines, and just took a lot of pride in the work that I did in general. This was my start in the business, and it was an opportunity that I was very grateful for, because it helped me get my next job, which was in Sioux Falls, South Dakota at KDLT. I was going to be the weekend meteorologist, and I was going to also be a MMJ, multimedia journalist. And I was going to be that 3 days a week in MMJ, and I was going to do weather on weekends. Well, I get to Sioux Falls, and it was going to be a busy schedule from the beginning. We were in a transition period, and I was actually going to be kind of learning the morning show, and which is, a longer show. A lot of morning shows are hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours long. Across the country, it does vary, depending on market and things like that, and varying by station too. And so I was going to be doing morning weather. They actually trained me on the morning show, and I also did weekends. So the first kind of difficult part of this business and difficult part of this job that I found out very soon was the fact that your schedule can flip on a dime. And so Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I was waking up at around midnight, going into work at around 12:30, 12:45 in the morning, and working until we didn't have a midday show. So I'd work until 10 o'clock in the morning and be done. So that was my schedule when I did the morning show. And then weekend weather, I was from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. So that schedule flip was really difficult. But again, I was just starting out my career on being in TV and being on TV. And so I was going to do anything that it took to kind of, I don't know if I was trying to get a leg up or what exactly I was trying to do. I was just trying to be a team player more than anything. I wanted to be a team player. I wanted to be a guy that could be counted on no matter what time of day it was. And that is what I wanted to be. And this was all done out of, anxious feelings about getting started in this business and things like that I wanted to do this and wanted to work so hard because, I aspired to grow and get better. And this was a way for me to get better, for sure. Doing 5 days a week of weather, even with the schedule flip, it didn't matter to me at the time. Eventually it started taking some, it started having some impact on my health. Certainly, I think anyone doing that schedule flip kind of knows the feeling. If any of you out there watching or listening are, in news currently, you know what I'm talking about. You know that schedule flip. And so if you're getting into the business, do know that those schedule flips do happen from time to time. And it's a little bit difficult to kind of go through in moments. So getting a little bit more into the start of my career in Sioux Falls, it wasn't too long after I started. I started in, it was kind of the beginning of September of 2017, and it was in October, second week of October, my cousin Michael, who is actually my age, he was a year or two older, actually passed away. And, I was in the middle of doing that schedule flip at the time, and, kind of found out, got the call that my cousin passed away, and it was really, obviously that's a difficult thing. Losing a family member and losing someone who you were pretty close with, and someone who, was not only your cousin, but was also your friend, was really difficult. And this, this happened so early in my career, and I found out very quickly how much you have to push through any struggle you may be going through in life in order to be the person that you need to be on TV when the cameras are rolling. And that may sound like something that might not all be all that difficult. But if you have experienced it at all, you know how difficult it can be to just put a smile on and make it seem like you are happy. Some people are good at it. Some people are better than others. And I had to do that. I found it very quickly. I took a week off, came back to work. They were very accommodating at KDLT, and I do, I've always appreciated that. Letting me go home and letting me, go to the funeral, and just letting me be with family for a week while this happened. And so, I went through that, and when I got back to work, obviously it was still very difficult for me, and still was going through a tough time, and through a little bit of the grieving process, so to speak. And that, being on TV 5 days a week, and having to smile and act like nothing was going on, and like nothing had happened, was really hard. So I found out pretty quick how difficult that can be, and I've continued to have to work on it at different times throughout my career and different times in life. So now that we are through that, and again, I do want to sort of thank KDLT, my managers at the time, my news director, of letting me go home to be with family. Starting out so soon, it really put the station in a pinch, because again, we were shorthanded when I got there, and really put the station in a pinch. And so, I was grateful that they let me do what I needed to do in order to kind of get through that and be with family during that difficult time. And so it was not too long after that, and again, this is very, very, very shortly into my career, we did radio forecasts for a couple of radio stations. It was kind of a radio company that owned about 8 or 9 different stations in and around the Sioux Falls area, and kind of throughout our viewing area. And we did a forecast for them twice a day. And of course, I was doing the morning show at the time, and so I did the morning forecast. And I messed up. I can't remember exactly what my mistake was. I think it was something, I said it was actually Tuesday, and I messed up and said it was Thursday. And, I sent that off, and about 2-3 minutes after sending that off to the radio station, I realized what had happened, and, just reached out to him and said, hey, I'm going to resend it. I messed up. And, I'm really sorry about that. And so I, re-recorded, sent it off. No big deal, right? Well, I actually ended up, I think it was the week after, maybe 2 weeks after, somewhere around there. I ended up being called into a meeting with my general manager. And again, when it comes to KDLT, I'm not going to name any names here. I had to have a meeting with my general manager and with a couple of the people at the radio place that were kind of running things and were managers, and kind of dealt with the radio FTP, where I sent off stuff and sent off the radio forecasts and things like that. And I was humiliated. I was absolutely humiliated that I made that mistake and had to have a meeting with with everyone involved. And it was a really difficult meeting to actually be a part of and go through, because, well, I just heard them say some things that really hurt me deep down. And again, I'm so young so young in my career. So I was, coming up on 4 years ago, and I'm turning 28 soon. I was 24 at the time, just getting things going, and I had already messed up. And they kind of told me they told my general manager that they should have just kept the previous person that was in my position, because they really like them. And they said that in front of me, to my face. My my general manager told them that I didn't have a degree, and they were shocked by that. And it was really difficult. It was incredibly hard to go through that and sit through just kind of being humiliated and kind of, kind of crapped on for about 15 minutes. Did a lot of crying after that one. After that one was over, cried on my way home. Thought I'd just ruined my career from that one little mistake. And then the week after happened. And they canceled the partnership, the radio partnership with us. And I was to blame. I was blamed for losing that radio partnership and losing, the however many thousands of dollars were exchanged for that partnership with the station. And of course, I felt even worse about it. Email was sent out to the station that had happened. And, again, I was blamed for it. And that was just a mess. I was a mess. I was a mental mess for quite a while over that one. And again, I was like, wow, I just started my career, man. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose this start. I don't want to lose this momentum. It was so difficult. And as I get into a little bit more experiences, this will make more sense. And you will, whoever you are watching, you will realize and know that this is just kind of how things would go for me in Sioux Falls. So I, after being told I was blamed for it, about 6 to 8 months, somewhere around there later, I was speaking with a friend of mine who was the weekend meteorologist at the station across town, and I knew that they were doing the radio. I knew they were doing radio, and that we had used to do before I messed it up, or at least so I thought. And he was kind of the one that, kind of laid it out and laid out the picture to me that it actually wasn't because I made that mistake. It was because that they, in their station, paid a little bit more for the partnership. And so that was, of course, I got more hurt by the whole situation, and that just sucked. Like, I don't know why I had to be kind of their scapegoat, so to speak. I'm not really sure. I'm not sure why I had to be their scapegoat, but I did. And that was incredibly difficult for me to hear, that it really wasn't my fault when I'd blamed myself for so long. And that was just horrible. And that was kind of experience number one in a multitude of experiences that would come about as we became a full weather team and I transitioned back to being just weekends. And that's when I started my reporting career during the week. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I was a Dayside Reporter. And, it wasn't bad at first. I was, there was a learning curve for sure. I already had known how to shoot my own video for news because I, did it in Des Moines for, about 6-7 months. And so, I kind of had already had a little bit of a base and a little bit of a foundation. And, I was just kind of honing in on my interviewing skills and, just kind of getting things down a little bit more. We had a fantastic chief photographer at KDLT, and he's, I still consider him a friend, and he was great in teaching me. And one of the producers, the executive producer, he was also very, very much a huge help throughout my time. And a lot of people that I ended up meeting and being friends with in Sioux Falls became best friends, and that's something that I've taken with me, is how many people I did end up appreciating and coming to know in Sioux Falls. It was a great experience when it comes to some of the people I worked with, no doubt about that. So, you know, being a reporter was difficult. That learning curve was difficult for sure, but it was something I got more, a little bit more comfortable with. I was never fully comfortable just because, hey, I wanted to do weather and nothing but weather. And that was what I was comfortable with. That's what I love doing. And, at the same time that I'm saying all this, it's great to be multifaceted. It's great to be multi-skilled. And it's great to have different skills, especially when it comes to news and TV. If you're an aspiring reporter or aspiring meteorologist, that's my advice to you right now. And I'll just say it outright. Be willing to do a few different things because it is great to learn. But it was really things got very difficult for me as I got further along because a lot of the stories that I did first off were kind of more simpler stories and a little bit just kind of easier to put together and a little bit more I could have some fun with them, and that's where that was where it was enjoyable. But as I continued to improve, and again, this is something I had to work very, very hard at, and something that I wanted to take a lot of pride in. But as I got improved more and more as a reporter, I started having a little bit more responsibility to take on, which, hey, that's usually how things go, right? You get better at something, you have a few more responsibilities with it, a few more tasks, and a few more things to do, and that's totally fine, and that's good. It's good to push yourself. It's good to be pushed, and in this business, you got to allow yourself to be pushed, because if you don't get it at one station, you're going to have it at another, down the road somewhere. That's just how it goes. You get pushed. You get pushed by people, whether it's your boss, anchors, people that have more experience than you get pushed. And again, it's not always a bad thing. I got pushed, more and more, and started doing more, a little bit harder news stories, fires, deaths of some kind, homicides, things like that. Did a few more stories like that, and it's hard not to take that stuff home with you emotionally. There were days where I would go home crying. There was a day where I was in court doing a story and covering something that happened, and the person that did this awful, awful crime, was in court that day, and I just had to go listen in, get some more details, and kind of write things down in the courtroom, and come back and put a little something together for the newscast. And I heard the story, heard what had happened, heard what this guy was charged with. That was hard to listen to. I can't even imagine. And not only that, I just can't imagine being his family. And what ended up happening was I ended up being I was wearing, of course, my polo with my news station, and logo attached to it. And I ended up getting kind of cornered by a couple family members. And they said, you better not you better not use the names of these two people. They're just kids. And, we weren't going to do that anyway. But I was kind of crapping myself. I'm not going to lie. Getting cornered by family members of this guy. And, they were just not happy. Of course they didn't want this to get covered. It was their family member, son, brother, whatever relation it was to these people. And it was things like that. I just want to generalize kind of some of what made being a reporter so tough for me was things like that. And that wasn't the only time that something like that occurred. Because, again, I covered hard news stories. And sometimes this stuff happened. And that was incredibly hard to go through and incredibly hard to deal with because I never want to upset anyone. Sometimes that's to a fault. But I don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to upset anyone. And, that's just... I think all of us kind of deep down have some of that, in us. in all of us. And anyway, that made reporting really difficult. I also got, like, going back to my point on being pushed, I got pushed by our evening anchors. They had much more experience than I did. They were fantastic at their jobs. They were so good. And I got pushed hard by them, sometimes in a harsh fashion. I got told sometimes that the intros to a package of mine were garbage. I had to redo it. I sometimes would make a mistake within the package, and after leaving work, after being there for 9-10 hours, I'd get called back in to fix it. They weren't going to fix it. I did the story. I made the mistake. I had to go back and fix it. And it was pretty hard. It was pretty hard to do, do those sorts of things. And, it was an experience that, was difficult at times, no doubt about it. And there was something else that you had to do as a reporter. And again, I'm just going to be talking to you guys about my experience here. Once or twice a week as a reporter, you would have to do what's being on call. And you would be on call listening to the police scanner until midnight or 2 in the morning, depending on what day of the week it was. And you had to just sit at home and listen to the scanner. Couldn't go to bed. Couldn't do anything until that timeline was finished. And that was in case that anything happened, breaking news of some kind, that you heard it on the scanner and you would go into the station and go cover it. And we didn't get paid for this, to sit on call, and which I didn't agree with. And what this also did was, sometimes there were nights you had to be on call until 2 in the morning and then be right back at work at, 8:30, 9 o'clock the next day. And that's that's a tough turnaround for anyone. That would drain people. I would drain most of you probably at some point. And, maybe some of you are just, stronger than that. And I applaud it. I applaud that. Good for you. That's admirable for sure. But for me, I've got some health issues. I've got functional neurological disorder, causes me to, suffer from blackouts, and I've got meds to kind of control these things, but I still struggle with it sometimes, and sometimes the lack of sleep and also high stress can kind of trigger this condition for me, which comes along with it extreme fatigue and, like I said, these blackouts where I just pass out, eyes roll in the back of my head, and I'm out. And it's something that's been impacting me for a little over 4 years. So kind of just before I started in this business, I kind of started to struggle with this. And ended up getting it diagnosed at Mayo Clinic and whatnot. And it just, it's changed my life forever. It's changed my life big time. But, one of these nights that I'd be on call, I'd have to get up early the next day. You can imagine that put a stress on this condition that I suffer from, and on my mind, on my body, and on everything, every part of me. And it started to really impact me. And there were a couple times I was late for work because I had a blackout in the morning. So the amount of stress and anxiety and depression that I was going through, during this time, especially after I started covering hard news, was incredibly difficult. And, it was hard. I couldn't get it under control. Once I kind of started having a few blackouts, multiple days in a row, it's kind of impossible for me to control unless I've got a couple days off and I can really rest and recover. And I really get that. In Sioux Falls, most of my time in Sioux Falls, I didn't really get the time that I needed, both mentally and physically, in order to be able to recover from different things. And so I went into I emailed my general manager and said, and my news director, and said, hey, this is really hard for me. I've only got a couple more weeks where I actually need to be on call. And someone else that was coming in was going to take over that spot. And I was like, could someone just take an extra extra night of on call, I really need to kind of rest and get this under control. It's really starting to impact my life in a negative way and really starting to impact the work that I'm doing while I'm here. And that email turned into a meeting with my news director, corporate HR rep, and my general manager. And during this meeting, kind of explained to them what was going on. I was very open with them on this health condition that I suffered from, and had been very open with them from the very beginning, from when I started. And during this meeting, I was told by my general manager at one point that, if I couldn't handle the responsibilities of this job, then maybe I shouldn't be in it. Maybe I should quit. Do something that's a little bit easier and less demanding. I was actually told this to my face. And so, much like how I felt in most of my time in Sioux Falls, I felt just kind of trapped. I was no longer in control of my own life. They kind of controlled my life, and they made it clear that I was, in their mind, just, nothing I did was ever good enough for them. My work was never good enough. All the days that I worked and all the times I went through 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 days in a row without an extra day off after, all the times I went through those stretches, none of it was ever, really good enough for them. And so I never found myself to be really good enough while I was there. And they continued to make that clear to me. Constantly worried about the reputation of theirs because I didn't have a degree, because I hadn't finished schooling at Mississippi State yet and gotten a certificate in meteorology. Morning anchor that would constantly, if she called me a meteorologist, even on live TV, would backtrack and say, "Oh, we can't call you that yet." Not that most of the viewers would know really much of a difference, to be honest. They saw me do the forecast, and they trusted my forecast and trusted me to do the weather. That should have been it. And so I just was I constantly felt this pressure that I just was never good enough. And again, they showed this to me time and time again. No matter how much work I did, no matter what I did, it was horrible. It was really difficult. And so I'm going to fast forward a bit here. Got another experience to tell you guys about. And this experience comes when we had our chief meteorologist at the time, who made my life a little bit difficult at times in Sioux Falls. I won't get too much into that, but our evening meteorologist and morning meteorologist put in their 2 weeks within a couple of days of each other, which was going to leave just me on the weather team left, as far as what was the established weather team at the time. And I thought, hey, I've put in a ton of work. I've reported on anything they've asked me to do. I've worked really hard on my craft. I've worked really hard to improve. I've worked all the shows. I've worked countless evening shows, countless morning shows. I've done the weekends. Our weekend ratings are up. And all the shows that I was a part of on the weekends, the ratings were up. The ratings were good. I was like, hey, this might be a good time. This might be a good time for me to go to the mornings, take over a full-time weather spot. I felt ready for it. I felt like I could take on that responsibility. And I was like, yeah, I've done this enough. I could do this. Easy. Let's go for it. I was never a serious candidate for that job. Even though they knew me, I'd been there for over a year. I was never a serious candidate for that job. And I didn't really know that until they had me interview 3 times with 3 different people for this position. They already knew me. They already knew who I was. And that's what I had to do. Basically kind of bought them enough time to hire someone that they thought would be better. And you know what? That's sometimes how life goes, right? Sometimes you do just end up, as especially again, I keep saying this business, business of news and TV. Sometimes it does happen. It's very competitive. Sometimes you are just beat out by people who are better, and people who are maybe not better than you, but maybe are a better fit for what a station is looking for and looking to do, and how a station is looking to progress, because that kind of plays into things too, And so after doing all these interviews, I was like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good here. I'm feeling confident. And on one of my days off, I was told, hey, come in with a meeting. There's a meeting with our corporate office, our general manager, our interim news director at the time. And I was honestly feeling good. I was like, I've got this in the bag, man. Like, I have got this. I felt like I nailed my interviews, answered all their questions, and I thought I answered them all well. And it wasn't more so that I got beat. That wasn't the problem for me. The problem was the meeting I had with everyone and what I got told. And it was basically just a 20-minute meeting of me being told that I just wasn't good enough. Hadn't done enough. Still didn't have my certificate in meteorology. I was actually failing. I was in the process of failing out of Mississippi State at the time. Believe it or not. It's what I was in the middle of doing. And I had to add the stress in of not getting the morning spot when I worked really hard for it. And it was more so being told to my face that I wasn't good enough, that they didn't think I could handle it, that I wasn't ready. But then to bridge the gap between finding a third meteorologist for the team and it just being me and this, other person that got hired. Again, I'm not going to mention any names here, but they thought it was totally okay that I took over the morning show until we found that replacement. Yeah. So basically, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't ready for it. I couldn't handle it. But because it benefited them, they were just fine with me taking over for however long it was going to take to hire a chief meteorologist. That is what bothered me. That is what weighed on my mind. And that was the most difficult part. Let alone the fact that as I was leaving, the first smile I saw in the room throughout this entire meeting was from my general manager, and she said, we're loving our weekend ratings, so we wanted to offer you a raise. It was 15 cents an hour. In the end, that's how much I was worth to them. 15 cents an hour. And granted, I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't get paid dirt nothing in Sioux Falls, and I know of places that pay even less than what KDLT paid me. And it's pathetic. The pay in this business is absolutely pathetic. Do this because you love it. Do this because this is your passion. Do this because basically just that. Do this because you love it. Don't do this thinking that you're going to get paid a lot, because you won't. And that is just the harsh reality of it. The pay is not good most and almost all places that you go, especially starting out your career. Now that I have that out of the way, let's continue on with this story. After this had happened, I left that meeting in tears. I didn't cry actually in front of anyone. I just cried on my way home, cried in my living room, called a few family members and cried myself to sleep for about the next week straight, about every night. Just couldn't, I was just humiliated. I couldn't believe how awful I felt, and it was just not good. It's just all not good. Put me in a really bad spot mentally, and this brought feelings of suicide. This brought feelings of just dark thoughts, dark things. Awful feelings. And I would have rather been dead than stay there, be a reporter. Work with the people and more importantly, work for the people that thought I just sucked. Or at least that's what they told me. And that's what they thought of me to my face. Which is even worse, honestly. You can tell me I need to improve. I can take criticism. I've taken plenty of criticism, plenty of constructive criticism, but being told you're bad at your job and that you don't deserve and haven't proven yourself or being told you can't handle something, that's not constructive criticism. That is destructive criticism. I know the difference now. At the time, I thought they were just trying to be constructive, and I truly thought I sucked. I truly thought I was terrible at my job. I truly thought I, hadn't done enough, even though I thought before going into that I had. And I guess I just kind of conceded. And again, depression, anxiety, thoughts of suicide, it all came to me. 2 different times I thought about killing myself. Just ending it. It's a terrible experience. A lot of trauma. A lot of traumatic experiences that I am still working through in therapy. Therapy is a beautiful thing, let me tell you that. It's definitely ruffled a lot of things that and undusted a lot of boxes that I didn't really want to unpack. But I have to unpack these things, and that's kind of why I'm doing this sort of podcast today. And so I started after that. Of course, I kind of started looking places to go. My fiance at the time, she sat me down and she said, "You are not the same person anymore. You come home angry. You come home sad." There were mornings where she would get me up for work and I would just sit there and cry because I didn't want to go. We shared a car. We were in debt. We had hardly any money. Hardly enough money to pay the bills. And most of the time I had to go into farther debt to pay the bills and make sure that we were doing okay. She sat me down and she just said, you have to leave. You have to go someplace else. You can't keep living this life. You can't keep living here. And I want to mention to you that the few experiences that I have shared with you in this video are only a few of multiple similar experiences. Just to give you an idea of how traumatic this was and how traumatic these nearly 2 years of my time spent there were. So I continued and had multiple more stretches of, 12, 13, 14, 15 days in a row. Could never have a day off or an extra day off because I had to report. I had to be a reporter. I'm glad they trusted me in the newsroom and trusted me to do a good job. That's what I wanted to do, even though I didn't like it. I wanted to do good work because there were people at that station that deserved it. That deserved my best every day because it was only going to help out the team. They deserved my best because that's what was best for the team. And I think you could say that in just any line of work Everyone deserves your best every day. So I tried as hard as I could to keep that mindset and continue to work for the people that I loved in Sioux Falls and came to love and became best friends with. Anyway, there's one morning that I literally thought to myself, I'd much rather be dead and just freaking hanging somewhere 6 feet under. I know this is graphic, harsh, whatever, but I have to share it. I have to share it in, in the reality and clearness of what this was. And that's where I would have rather been, was dead. Not breathing. Heart stopped. Life over. It's where I would have rather been. And it was that morning that I said, I can't do this anymore. I have to look elsewhere. And this was very shortly after my fiance had sat me down and just let me know I wasn't the same person anymore. That was tough to hear too. I wasn't the same Joe anymore. And that was difficult. So, started looking, found a job. Here I am. I'm in a less toxic workplace. I made it out. I made it out of that terrible experience. And I'm in a much better situation now. Money's still tight. I'm getting paid better, but money is still tight. And that's what happened to me. And again, I'm married now. There you go. I'm in a much better situation. Actually, I'm doing weather 5 days a week. I'm working mornings. You tell me I couldn't handle mornings. I was told that. I was told I couldn't handle mornings. I was told that I wasn't good enough. And I'm here. I'm doing mornings. And you know what? I think I'm doing at least okay. At the very least okay. And I'm actually in a place I'm appreciated. I made it out of that storm. And that was Sioux Falls. That was KDLT. I made it out. And there's the positive end to this story. For watching this, listening to this, I just want, and you're thinking about getting into this business, I want you to know that it is worth it. It is probably going to be difficult most places that you are. Most places that you go. It's just a difficult, demanding, and at times draining business. But you can find a work-life balance. You can have fun with your job. You can work hard, get better, and move up in the world in this business. You can absolutely do all of those things. But I wanted, as harsh as some of these realities are, sometimes this kind of stuff goes on at news stations. I know KDLT wasn't the only place that people had similar experiences. Similar tough times with their general manager. Sometimes it was a news director, their direct boss. The direct person they spoke with most days. Sometimes it was that person that they had a tough time with. But of all the tough times, it's all about making it through. I still have a passion for weather. I still have a love for weather. And I still feel incredibly blessed to be able to do this because it's been my dream for as long as I can remember. And that's how I want to end this, is by saying that I love it and that I'm still here. And that I'm glad I didn't take my own life. Just because of some of the experiences that I was going through at the time were a little bit too difficult for me to kind of comprehend in my mind. I just couldn't believe how hard it was. And I didn't see a way out. But I'm there. I'm out. And things are much better now. So I want to thank you all for watching any of this, tuning into any portion of this. I really do appreciate it. I'm going on about 51 minutes here. I figured I'd talk for a while, but I just want you all to know that it is okay to get help. It's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to have a tough time in your work experiences. But I want you to know that there's always a way out. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it just takes a little bit harder to get there than others. It takes a little bit longer to get there than others. And I think one of the greatest sayings that I've heard over the last year, and something I didn't really hear much before, and maybe you've heard of it, it's tough times don't last. Tough people do. And I want you to know that if you have gone through tough times, you are one of those tough people because you've lasted. And I want you to pat yourself on the back for that today. Thank you so much for listening. Don't know if I'll make another one of these. And if you're getting into the news business, I wish you the very best of luck. And I wish nothing but blessings in your first job. And I guess that goes for really anything else too. Thanks again for listening. We'll talk to you next time.